Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de, well, why this idiotic influencer slash sad excuse for a human being, however sad I may find him, them, should still be allowed to identify as whatever he damn well pleases, okay? And why this doesn't bother me at all. Okay. Hey, Zempak here. So my wifey sent me this article because she says, hey, I'm not allowed to comment on this since, I'm not Asian, but you, which she's talking about me, you are allowed to comment on this because you're Asian. Now, with a context like that, I definitely had to read this article, and I will link it below, and I was like, holy crap, she's right. I totally do have an opinion on this particular internet drivel. So the article is about this so-called person, I guess, named Ali London, I think, who loves one K-pop star so much that he's gotten a bunch of plastic surgery to look like one of the members of the K-pop band BTS. In fact, they now identify themselves as Korean and also non-binary. So right off the bat, I'm going to ignore the non-binary part and then the whole he refers to himself as they bit, because honestly, I don't know enough about gender identity to comment on. It just doesn't feel like it's my place to comment on a subject I've never had any feelings on. If anything, all I feel about that part is my aversion to changing the language of English, which I do so love. But hey, languages do evolve over time, and I just gotta get with the program, okay? I'm fine with that. So the real crux is that I'd like to pick on this idea of cultural or national identity, right? So apparently this Ollie guy has gotten a lot of flack for identifying himself as Korean, themselves as Korean, mainly due to the fact that their literal changing of the face and I guess identifying with a culture that's not their own. I'd like to refute the backlash now with, logic. Point number one, I think and I believe anyone can identify with any culture they want. Not full stop though. That doesn't mean that they'll be accepted as such, however. Personal example, I like the Roman Empire and I speak a little bit of Latin. Does that mean Romans would think that I'm one of them if I simply said so? I mean, this is assuming if they were still around still, right? Which I doubt that'd be the case even if they were. Still, if I identify and love some other culture other than my own and I live in a country with freedom of speech, surely I could claim that, right? I mean, isn't this the same issue as that white lady who identified as black? Remember that? Like Don's ago or whatever her name was? I mean, I'm not saying that I don't think that it's absolutely absurd, but that was a lady from a privileged class that specifically wanted to make her life more like an oppressed class. I cannot fathom exactly why she felt the way that she did, or even agree with that type of assessment. But in a free country, I say, hey, go for it. Call yourself black, even if you're a white lady if you want. To me, the issue here is simply one of public acceptance, right? Neither she nor this Ollie moron was or will likely to be accepted by their choice of cultural identification. That's all. But identifying as something, isn't that a personal choice? And in a free country, I said, let them, right? What's the harm? I mean, other than these occasional idiots, I mean, do people think that letting each individual self-identify as some other cultural group will then cause some kind of catastrophic cascading cultural phenomenon? Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, that's why these two were in the news, because their mental state has to be questioned to even utter these idiotic, just inane, mundane type of proclamations, right? Point number two, if we want to get technical about it, in this particular case, this doofus wants to call himself Korean. That's actually both a culture and a country. So in a way, there is a legal way to refute whether they Korean or not. These new pronouns are a pain, okay? I'm gonna say is because Ali is not a royal or a plurality as far as I can tell, right? They love Korea so much, I mean, they could or should just learn the language and get the citizenship of that country, shouldn't they? Because that would be a real sign of commitment rather than what they're saying that they're doing, right? Which is really just a series of publicity stunts, right? Look, I don't have problems with morons such as them getting publicity at all, okay? After all, I'm talking about it, and the media at large was talking about it. And that's the audience fault for being into it, right? Not the content creators, right? They provide an act, and we choose to follow along, so we are all complicit here. The point is to address the possibility of identification as a separate nationality of your birth. And again, technically speaking, I don't actually have a problem with this, right? Why can't some random white dude be Korean, right? I don't believe the nation of Korea specifically says that you can only be Korean if you're of a certain genetic makeup, right? So the backlash here is that simply this moron isn't actually Korean at heart and is just pretending or being a poser. Sure, that may or may not be the case, but I can see they would just say that they is identifying with the culture rather than the nation state, right? Honestly, that's fine too. But then the issue becomes, that's a subjective judgment on how devoted someone is to the culture, and there's no final judge on what is considered a threshold for cultural appreciation. Is there? I mean, hey, just because I like drinking doesn't make me Irish, does it? Or is that only on St. Paddy's Day? But yeah. Point number 3. Now, I really gotta comment on how this dude, because of all their plastic surgery, actually thinks that it makes them look like Jimin from BTS. Or what? Okay, just because they've got the same haircut and hair color and some makeup on, now they think they look Korean? They do not. Okay, does not. I can't. Oh my god, this pronoun thing is tripping me up. Okay, and it's honestly quite insulting to me as an East Asian, right? To hear them say something like that. I mean, to me, they just look like some goth kid who's way too old to still be playing goth. Okay, but to say that they look like a specific member of BTS, well, I mean, to me, that's really leaning into what they think East Asians look like. Okay. Any Asian person, or rather no Asian person, would possibly mistake Ollie London for any member of BTS, or even mistake him for an Asian person, like, at all, right? You know what he looks like to me? I mean, what they look like? Oh my god. They look like a 50-year-old white lady trying to plastic surgery herself back 30 years, but then forgot to change that old lady haircut, okay? Anyway. Tangential rant done. Because what I was getting at is that, well, I think this idiot looks just plain awful and not like a K-pop star at all. I don't actually agree with the backlash that what he's doing is cultural appropriation still, okay? Even if I disagree with the results, why would I deny their chance or choice to try? So one of the articles from the backlash talks about how this type of plastic surgery is creepy and a fetishization. But that's all plastic surgery, if you really think about it, right? The only difference is that, generally speaking, plastic surgery is meant to adjust towards a beauty standard of said community or group. So the only real difference between that and what Ollie did is that they hyper-focused their standard of beauty to a single individual. So tell me, which is creepier? One person trying wholeheartedly to imitate one other person in terms of beauty, or what actually happens in certain parts of the world, like South Korea or Brazil, where a large group of people tries to mostly imitate a generic cultural standard with regards to, say, preferred size of posteriors or double eyelids or nose shapes or whatnot. Yeah, I'm certainly no beauty expert, but philosophically speaking, I see no real difference between these two groups at all. They're just different shades of gray in terms of overall creepiness, okay? Now, you guys can probably tell, I don't really like this dude or dudette or whatever they want to call themselves, but I love the society that I live in because it's free, right? They can feel free to make terrible choices in terms of plastic surgery, or say dumb stuff and identify with a culture that they have barely scratched the surface of. Still be allowed to do all these things. The best reaction really is to just change the channel. I mean, I'm on the subject because I'd like to see some real cultural re-identifications happen, right? I'd be delighted to see some random person who doesn't look East Asian but somehow is really into the culture, right? Whether it's Chinese, Japanese, or Korean, or whatever, right? I think that'd be awesome because the reverse case already occurs plenty of times, mostly due to necessity, right? I am, of course, referring to myself. In my experience, I know more about American history than most Americans I have actually met. This isn't fetishization, though, because I learned mostly out of necessity as an immigrant. That's the big difference, isn't it? All sorts of people choose to come to the US, and they choose to learn about the culture. I would simply love it if more people went the other way, right? And only then can cultural exchanges be more meaningful at a macro level, right? That'll be the day. Hey, who knows? Maybe Ollie the dummy here that I'm talking about will accidentally help push this trend along. Wouldn't that be something? Anyway, in the meantime, comment, share, and all that social media BS. Cheers!